Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Into the Killing. In this week's episode, we're going to take a look at a very bizarre case that happened in Harrington, Delaware in June 1991. Harrington is a small farming community in central Delaware. In 1991, it had a population of about 2,300 people. Every July, Harrington hosts the Delaware State Fair. 41-year-old Charles Holden lived in a trailer in Harrington. His mother, 7-year-old Dorothy Donovan, lived in a house on an adjacent property. Holden worked at a factory. On the night of June 22, 1991, he worked the 4 o'clock to 11 o'clock shift. Shortly after midnight, Holden called the police from a payphone near his home. He told them he had come home and saw a strange man on his property. So he drove past his property and went directly to the payphone. A state trooper met Holden at the payphone and they went to his home. They found nothing out of sorts with the trailer. Holden asked the trooper to check his mother's home. They went to the back of the house and discovered that the window on the back door had been smashed. Holden and the state trooper made their way to the master bedroom. The master bedroom was covered in blood. In the bedroom was the dead body of 7-year-old Dorothy Donovan. When they discovered the body, Holden said, "I can't believe he killed her." Dorothy Donovan had been stabbed multiple times in the chest, arms, and face. The medical examiner found 26 different lacerations on her body. The medical examiner couldn't say for sure what the murder weapon was. An investigator said that the murder was overkill and it seemed like the killer acted out in rage. Donovan's body had been arranged in a way to make it look like she had been sexually assaulted, but the medical examiner did not think she had been raped. Investigators thought that the crime might have been staged to make it look like it had been a sex murder. The police looked around the house and nothing appeared to have been stolen. So the police don't think that robbery was the motive. If rape or robbery wasn't the motive, then why was the 7-year-old grandmother brutally murdered? The police thought that the overkill nature of the murder indicated that the murder was personal and someone close to Donovan had killed her. If Donovan were killed for personal reasons, it would explain the lack of rape and why nothing had been stolen. The police interviewed Charles Holden. He explained that shortly before midnight, he saw for a late-night dinner at a fast food place about 3 miles from his home. Holden said that as he was walking to his car, a man came up to him and said that his sister was giving birth in Georgetown, Delaware, which is about 25 miles from Harrington. The man said he was looking for a ride. Holden explained to the man that he only lived a few miles away, so he couldn't help him out. But then Holden felt bad and told the man that he could drive him a short distance. The man agreed and got into his truck. When Holden got to the intersection where he turned to go to his home, he pulled over and told the man that this was as far as he could take him. The intersection was about half a mile away from his home. The man became angry and assaulted Holden. Holden said that the man ordered him to give him all his money and the keys to his truck. But instead, Holden said he grabbed his keys and got out of the truck and then ran. The man ran after him with a screwdriver that he had picked up off the floor of Holden's truck. Holden said that the man ordered him to drive him the rest of the way or he would kill him. So Holden told the man that he would drive him. Holden got into the driver's seat and the man walked around to the other side of the truck to get into the passenger seat. Holden said that before the man could get in, he took off. Holden said that the incident freaked him out, so he drove around for a while. When he reached his home, he saw the hitchhiker lurking around his property. So he drove to a payphone and called the police. Holden told the police that he believed that the hitchhiker killed his mother as a form of revenge against him for not driving him to Georgetown. Holden described the hitchhiker as a black man in his late 20s or early 30s. He was about 5'9" with a slender build and a pockmarked face. He wore glasses with oversized lenses. To the detectives, Holden's story was unbelievable. Notably, Holden and his mother lived half a mile from the intersection where Holden supposedly had the altercation with the hitchhiker. If the hitchhiker walked from the intersection to his home, he would have passed several houses on the way. Also, Holden and his mother didn't live on the road where he dropped off the hitchhiker. There was another turn he would have had to make to get to their properties. So why, out of all the houses, would the hitchhiker pick Holden's mother's home? It's not like he knew where she lived. Finally, why would the hitchhiker brutally stab Holden's mother to death while she was in bed? The hitchhiker didn't have a motive to kill his mother. Yes, he may have been angry that Holden didn't drive him to Georgetown, but is that enough of a motive to stab his mother 26 times in the chest and the face? So the detectives confronted Holden.
What you said happened doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for it to happen that way. You're not believable, Charles. You're saying the words, but you're not convincing. You're saying the words, but I can see in your eyes that you're not telling us the truth. I'm telling the truth. So you're not.
Only an idiot would believe that story. Not me, an experienced policeman. An idiot wouldn't believe that story.
You're telling us about a black man who assaulted you at the intersection, and then minutes later murdered your mother. That's what you're trying to get us to believe. And I'm saying it's just not logical. I don't think it's physically possible for that black man to get from that intersection to your house, kill your mother in the time it takes you to ride from the intersection to your house. It's just not possible, Charles. It's not believable.
Charles Holden maintained that he was innocent and that the hitchhiker killed his mother. So the detectives asked him to take a polygraph exam. Holden refused. Of course, this only made the detectives more suspicious of him. Charles Holden didn't have a criminal record, so what did he have to hide? The detectives investigated Holden's finances. They learned that over the past year he had taken on some debt. Also, his mother had recently taken out a life insurance policy that would pay out if she died in an accident. This would include being murdered. When the police are investigating a person of interest, they are generally looking for three things: means, motive, and opportunity. We'll start off with means. Essentially, does the person of interest have the tools, like access to the murder weapon, and the physical ability to commit the crime? With Dorothy Donovan's murder, her son, Charles Holden, had the means to kill her. Donovan was an elderly woman who was killed in her bed, and Holden was a factory worker who was 29 years younger. So he was physically able to commit the murder. The medical examiner never determined the murder weapon, but he said it could have been a screwdriver. The police thought it was interesting that the alleged hitchhiker happened to be armed with a screwdriver. Also, overkill is more common when the killer has a personal relationship with the victim. So the police thought that Holden definitely had the means to kill his mother. The motive was also clear to the police. It was financial. Holden was in debt, and his mother had a life insurance policy that would pay him money in the event of her untimely death. Then finally, there's opportunity. The police thought that Holden could have left work, got dinner, went directly home and killed his mother. He could have washed up and ditched the bloody clothes and the murder weapon and then drove to the payphone and called the police. This all made Charles Holden a perfect suspect. Plus, he had the ridiculous story about the hitchhiker who killed his mother. But then, the police ran into a huge problem with their investigation. None of the physical evidence proved that Holden killed his mother. A bloody palm print was found on the banister of the stairs. It did not match Holden's palm print. The police also found blood on a light switch, and the blood did not belong to Donovan. The police thought that the killer cut himself when he broke into the house. The DNA in the blood was compared to Holden's DNA. To their surprise, it wasn't his blood. The police interviewed people who were at the fast food restaurant around the time Holden said he stopped there for dinner. Several of them said that they saw a man who matched Holden's description of the killer. Nevertheless, the police were still convinced that Holden was involved in the murder. They thought he had hired someone to kill her so that he could get her insurance money. A major problem was that his story about the hitchhiker was simply unbelievable. There were simply too many holes in it. What are the odds that of all the houses to break into, he would pick Holden's mother's home and murder her in bed? For years, suspicion lingered over Charles Holden's head. 3 years after the murder, in 1994, the television show Unsolved Mysteries did a segment on the case. In the segment, the detectives were interviewed, and they didn't mention that they were suspicious of Charles Holden. But in reality, they still thought that his story was too strange to be believed. The Unsolved Mysteries segment failed to generate any leads, and the case continued to be cold. In 1990, a year before the murder, the FBI launched a pilot project called the Combined DNA Index System, which is also known by its acronym CODIS. It is a database of DNA belonging to offenders, arrestees, missing persons, and unidentified bodies. It started off with 12 state and local laboratories. Over the years, the project grew. By the 1990s, CODIS had collected DNA from all the states and the District of Columbia. In the spring of 2004, the police in Harrington reopened Dorothy Donovan's case. They took the DNA that was found at the crime scene and submitted it to CODIS. In November 2005, they were informed that a match had been found. It was the DNA of 41-year-old Gilbert Cannon. At the time of the murder, Cannon was 26 years old and he lived in Delaware. Cannon had a long rap sheet dating back to 1981. This included convictions for burglary, theft, assault, and resisting arrest. The police were able to get a mugshot of Cannon from the early 1990s. They saw a striking resemblance between him and the sketch of the killer. In January 1997, 5.5 years after the murder, Cannon was arrested after committing an armed robbery in Salisbury, Maryland. He was released from prison in December 2004. But before he left, they took a sample of his DNA and it was submitted to CODIS. Cannon's DNA was only submitted a week after the police in Harrington submitted the killer's DNA. The problem was that when Cannon's DNA was matched to the DNA left at Donovan's home, no one knew where he was. It took investigators 2.5 months to find him. It turned out he was living with a girlfriend in Selbyville, Maryland. On January 18, 2006, Gilbert Cannon was arrested for the murder of Dorothy Donovan. At first, Cannon denied having anything to do with the murder.
Like I said, I ain't killed nobody. That ain't even me.
But the police knew, at the very least, he was at the crime scene. Not only was his DNA found at the crime scene, but his palm print was a match to the bloody palm print found on the banister. The police confronted him regarding this indisputable evidence.
Well, Gilbert, one thing I can tell you is you were there. It's impossible for you not to be there, Gilbert. We're just telling you on tape. That is your DNA. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's no one else's. It's a perfect match. I don't know what you were doing back then. I had no idea. And we were actually hoping to sit down and try to get this resolved.
But then a few hours later, Cannon was singing a new song. Cannon told the detectives that on the night of the murder, he was high on cocaine and he wanted more. To get more cocaine, he needed to get to Georgetown. He said that he met a man in the parking lot of a fast food restaurant, and the man offered to drive him a few miles down the road. So he got into the man's pickup truck. Cannon told the police that when the man stopped the truck, he got into a fight with him. Cannon said that the man ran from the truck. He grabbed a screwdriver off the floor of the truck and he ran after the man. When he had the man trapped, the man said he would drive him the rest of the way. Cannon said that the man got into his truck before him and he took off without him. Cannon decided to start walking in the same direction the man drove off. He said he was looking for a house to sleep in. All the houses he came across had their lights on, so he knew someone was home, and he avoided those houses. Then he came across a house that looked like no one was inside of it. He broke in through the back door. But it turned out that there was an old woman in the house, and she saw him. Cannon said that he was worried she would identify him, so he stabbed her to death with a screwdriver. The police asked Cannon if he knew that the woman he killed was the mother of the man who gave him the ride. Cannon said that he did not know that. In fact, he was shocked to learn that fact. He said it was just a coincidence. Cannon also clarified that he didn't know Charles Holden, and he met for the first time that night. Cannon made it clear that Holden did not hire him or in any way request that he kill his mother. Cannon said that he acted on his own volition. After Cannon's confession, Charles Holden was cleared as a person of interest in the murder of his mother. If Gilbert Cannon were to be convicted of the murder, he was looking at the death penalty. To avoid that, in April 2007, nearly 16 years after the murder of 70-year-old Dorothy Donovan, Cannon pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. At the time of this recording, 56-year-old Gilbert Cannon is serving his sentence at the James T. Vaughn Correctional Center in Smyrna, Delaware. Investigators credit DNA science for two different things in this case. The first is that it solved the case. Secondly, it helped keep Charles Holden, an innocent man, out of prison. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. As always, our fact checker, producer, and sound designer was Adele Cloutier. She's on Instagram and you should follow her. A link to her account is in the description box. If you like this podcast, please subscribe or follow so you don't miss any future episodes. In our next episode, we're going to discuss a tragic murder that was heard by the victim's daughter. It is a heartbreaking but riveting case, so please subscribe so you don't miss it. If you just discovered this podcast, please check us out on YouTube. We have over 275 videos featuring some unsettling and bizarre true crime stories. You can find us at youtube.com/criminallylisted. But that's all for this week. Thanks again for listening. Please take care of yourself and stay safe.